I was asked about this pattern, and because it is very straightforward, I decided to make a video. This video is suitable for beginners and everyone who wants to understand how to read the patterns from the Passap magazine, so even if you don't like the sweater, please stay with me to read the instructions together. This sweater is also very easy to knit using the Passap Pinky and the E6000. The users of Passap Duomatic S can knit the sweater with a reversed needle diagram and settings on the locks. Now without further delay, let's get to the video. Today we will discuss model number 1322 from the 4th issue of Passap magazine. I highly recommend to print out the instructions or take a notebook to make notes if needed. Now let's look at the instructions. This is a Raglan sweater for girls at age of 12. The yarn used for this sweater is nylon yarn. You may use whatever yarn you want and works well with your machine. The stitch size given in the magazine is indicative. The yarn you choose may need a different stitch size setting. In the next row you can see the test square information from the test square used by the Passap team to knit the sweater. It has to be made with the same nylon yarn and the recommended stitch size written above. Before continuing further, make sure to knit a test swatch to find the right stitch size for your yarn. This pattern requires rotating the racking handle for 2 full revolutions, which will stretch the stitches on the back bed. That's why it is very important to knit a test swatch first. For the video I will use the numbers as given in the magazine, but to make a real sweater for somebody, make a gauge swatch, then calculate the stitches and the rows according to the ones given in the chart or according to the real kit measurements. As you can see, the measurements in the pattern are given in inches. If you aren't used to working with inches like me, you may manually convert the measurements or check if the same magazine is available in different languages. The 4th issue is only available in English at the time I'm making the video, but this is an example of the 5th issue. The charts in the French magazine are available in centimeters, so you can use them instead of converting the measurements. Next we have the diagram for the stitch pattern used for knitting the sweater. It's a racking pattern, which means that you will need to rotate the racking handle while knitting. It's important to notice this now and make sure the bed indicator is set to an appropriate position before you start knitting. This stitch pattern can also be found on page 42 in the small stitch pattern book. The special note refers to the needle diagram, and it is about how to arrange the needles on the back bed. I will skip this part for now and get back later. Now let's see the last paragraph. These are the knitting instructions. We have to knit part A tubular. Then for parts B and C we have to use the stitch pattern given in the diagram. Lastly, for parts D and E we have to use stockinette stitch. This is valid for the body and the sleeve of the sweater. Lastly, we have some instructions on how to make up the sweater. After we reviewed the instructions, make sure to pay attention to all symbols written on the charts. All of these symbols are explained in the first 2 pages of the magazine. On all horizontal lines you can see the number of stitches you must use and the equivalent in centimeters or inches. On all vertical lines you can see how many rows to knit and the equivalent in centimeters or inches. Along the edge with the plus and minus signs, the increases and decreases you must make are noted. I will explain them in a bit. Can you see the dotted line on the left of the sweater's body? This dotted line means that only half of the garment is shown on the chart. So all of the shaping must be done symmetrically on both sides of the garment. You have to keep that in mind while knitting. This is true for the sweater's body as well as for the sleeve. Now let's start demystifying the symbols on the charts. For part A on the sweater we have to cast on using 112 stitches. We have a circle in front of this number, so this means we have to use 112 needles on the front and 112 needles on the back bed. These 112 needles must give us a piece with a width of 17 inches. The next thing we have to investigate is the rows to knit. The letter T means tubular knitting, so 8 tubular rows are equal to 16 passes of the lock. But how should we start knitting part A? We have to choose a suitable cast-on method. For this sweater I will use a tubular cast-on. Now let's summarize how to knit part A. Make sure the bed indicator is set to 0 so you will be able to do the racking for the given stitch pattern later. The racking handle must be in its lowest position. Raise 112 needles on the front bed of the machine, 56 to either side of the center. Then raise 112 needles on the back bed. The needle roll has to be observed. You have to use the orange strippers. For the tubular cast-on you need to knit 4 rows. Set both locks to N for the first row, then knit 2 rows with the lock set to CX, and to finish the cast-on knit the last row with the lock set to N. I assume you already know how to make this cast-on. Don't forget to gradually increase the stitch size. Now after the cast-on is made you have to reset the row counter. Rotate the racking handle to its highest position and put the black strippers. Then set both locks to CX and knit 8 tubular rows. As I already said, 8 tubular rows are equal to 16 passes of the lock, so at the end the row counter should be at 16 rows. Now reset the row counter. Part A is done. To knit part B, first you have to arrange the stitches according to the diagram. To make that, use the double-eye bodkin tool and transfer the stitches from the back to the front bed. Then put the empty needles out of work. Here comes the special note given below the needle diagram. When you make the calculations according to your test swatch, you may not be able to arrange the needles on the back bed exactly as shown in the diagram, so make sure to calculate how to symmetrically arrange the needles before starting to knit the sweater. According to the special note, you can arrange them as you wish. After you arrange the needles, rotate the racking handle to its lowest position. As you can see on the diagram, the needles are not opposite to each other. Also, the needles on both beds will knit at the same time, so the racking handle must be in its lowest position. There are no pushers shown in the diagram, and this means they must be out of working position. From the beginning of part B until the very end of the piece, you will use the black strippers. Now you have to follow the instructions written next to the diagram. First, set both locks to N, then knit 2 rows and rotate the racking handle 2 full revolutions clockwise. Now set the back lock to AX and knit 2 rows. Then set the back lock to N, knit 2 rows and rotate the racking handle 2 full revolutions anti-clockwise. Set the back lock to AX and knit 2 rows. Then you have to repeat these steps until you knit a total of 96 rows. These are the steps to make part B. Now reset the row counter. We have a minus sign followed by the number 2. This means that you have to cast off 2 stitches. And since only the right half of the garment is shown in the chart, you have to cast off 2 stitches on the other side as well. Part C is also knitted in the same pattern, so you have to continue following the steps given next to the needle diagram. You have to knit a total of 64 rows. So after casting off 2 stitches on each side, you have to knit 4 rows according to the pattern. Then we have to follow the equation given on the chart. We have to decrease 2 stitches every 4 rows, a total of 15 times. Let's check that. 15 multiplied by 4 is equal to 60 rows. Therefore, after you cast off the first 2 stitches, you have to knit 4 rows, then continue following the equation. If you are a beginner, it's good to make a cheat sheet because you have to follow the decreases as well as the knitting instructions. Another important thing is that you will only count the stitches on the front bed. In other words, when you should cast off 2 stitches, you have to cast them off the front bed. If there is a needle in working position on the back bed opposite to the end stitches, you have to transfer the stitch to the front bed first and then cast off the stitches on the front bed. The other needles must remain arranged according to the needle diagram. What I suggest doing is to transfer the 2 end stitches 2 needles in, then transfer the end needle from the back bed using the double-eye bodkin tool. When you get to the end of part C, you must have a total of 48 stitches on the front bed. The working needles on the back bed are not counted. Now reset the row counter. We have to prepare the machine for knitting part D. To do so, rotate the racking handle to its highest position and use the double-eye bodkin tool to transfer all stitches from the back bed to the opposite needles on the front bed. Then return the racking handle to its lowest position and put all needles on the back bed out of work. To make part D, you have to knit a total of 8 rows, but you have to follow the equation on the right. Start by decreasing 1 stitch on each end and knit 4 rows. Then decrease 1 stitch on each end and knit 4 rows. This is how part D should be knitted. Don't forget that all shaping must be done on both sides of the garment. Now reset the row counter and let's make part D. Here we have the opposite equation. The plus sign means that we have to start by increasing 1 stitch on each end and knit 4 rows. Then increase 1 stitch on each end again and knit 4 rows. To make the increases, use the single prong tool. Transfer the end stitch 1 needle out, then hang the purl bump in the hook of the empty needle. At this point, you must have 48 stitches on the front bed. Now you have to cast off these stitches. You can do that by using the trick of it device or making a single bed chain stitch cast off using the latch hook. To make the sweater, you have to knit a second piece that would be the same as this one. The first piece will be the front and the second one the back of the sweater. Now let's look at the sleeve chart. I will mention the most important things that you have to focus on. Make sure to notice the dotted line. Once again, only half of the sleeve is shown, so all of the shaping must be done on both sides symmetrically. First, let's see part A. This time we don't have a circle in front of the number of the stitches to cast on. According to the instructions, this means that you should use 32 needles on the front bed and 32 needles on the back bed. Having in mind that 112 stitches are equal to 17 inches, I guess that there should be a circle in front of the 64. So instead of using 32 needles on each bed, we have to start with 64 needles on each bed. Part A of the sleeve is knitted exactly the same way as part A of the sweater, so start by making a tubular cast on, then set the machine to CX and knit 8 tubular rows or 16 passes of the lock. After you knit these rows, you have to reset the row counter and transfer the stitches from the back bed according to the needle diagram. Part B is made of 20 rows, so right after you transfer the stitches according to the diagram, you have to start making increases. According to the equation, you have to increase 1 stitch every 2 rows a total of 10 times. The tricky moment here is that except for making increases and knitting in the pattern, you have to raise needles on the back bed when needed to match the arrangement shown in the diagram. When putting a needle in working position on the back bed, instead of leaving it empty, I will put a purl bump in its hook. After you are done with part B, the row counter must be at 20 rows. Parts C, D and E of the sleeve are exactly the same as the same parts of the sweater's body. This had to be so because the top of the sleeve must match the body of the sweater. With all that said, I think you will be able to easily knit this sweater or become more confident in following the instructions in those magazines. I will soon upload some videos showing you how to knit the sweater. In the meantime, don't forget to let me know what do you find difficult about reading the patterns in the magazines. That's all for today. Have a nice day and see you in my next video.